Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. It's another exciting week. I'm happy to be here. I am solo today. That means it is a Cheers to Careers episode, which is like, I'm actually really excited to do it. I had higher hopes for like my energy levels when I first knew I was doing this, but I just kept letting life get in my way. And now I'm a bit unwell, exhausted. The time change just happened yesterday, so it's Monday. And yeah, I feel like a zombie today. And also less energized to be recording a podcast by myself. Like sometimes you need that other person's energy to like ignite you. RIP to Taylor this week. Anyways, so we're here for Cheers to Careers. I'm just gonna kind of jump into it because like what else is there to do? Um, One thing I will say before I jump into it, today was a really hard day professionally. Actually, the last couple days have been. This morning I had to terminate one of my dear, dear friends at work. That was really hard. I have not had to officially fire somebody that I am close with personally. So that was an experience. And I've always told people, like my friends at work, like if you're ever going to be fired, like I will just invite you out for a beer. I'll be like, hey, we need to go get a beer. And that's like the signal of like, I'm firing you. Unfortunately for me, he does not live here. And it's also a risk job wise to give somebody the heads up that you're going to fire them. So I debated. It was supposed to happen last week on Halloween, actually. I was able to delay that and it happened this morning and it was really hard. I normally really enjoy firing people. I actually would let my job be just terminating people, going to companies and getting rid of people that suck ass at their job for them because a lot of times companies don't have the balls to fire people. I love it. To me, here's my logic. If it's not the best for you personally and it's not the best for the company, like it's not serving either of you, and you're going to find something better, the company's going to experience something better. And I usually do need some justification. I need to understand why it's not working out. There needs to be like something. But for me, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. And so that's why I would love to fire people. This was the first time that I've really, really had a hard time terminating somebody to the point where when I was preparing his paperwork, I was like literally crying. Like I felt so bad. So that's what's been going on with me professionally. That happened today. My heart is just really sad. It hurts. It's hard to know that like someone I care about as a friend had that happen. So yeah, that's that's what's been happening in my work life. Today, we're approaching the end of the year, which is like always a really exciting time, I think, career-wise. Things start to wrap up. You start to suddenly be like, oh shit, like end of the year's coming. We got to close all these projects. I got to get my ducks in a row. Got to get organized. And then you also know that there's like a big chunk of slowdown time. Usually December is so slow. A lot of times companies like from the 15th of December on are like, I sort of got crickets, which is nice because you get a good chance to catch up. And then sometimes you have the luxury of having a bunch of time off. For me personally, I think it was last week or maybe just before last week. So anytime within the last 2 weeks, I calculated how many actual working days I have left, and I have 34 working days left in the year, which seems insane. But on top of that, it's actually less because I'm going to Vienna for work again, and those days they're like not going to be real work days. Like I'm going for like an offsite with my team, but then also like working a little bit in the office and then also traveling. So won't really feel like the same kind of work. So I have been in crunch mode. I have got to bust out some of these projects that's based off of like my bonus and all sorts of things. And when you really start to think about it, like you blink and I sort of got the end of the year is like here and you're starting into 2025 and you've got to start planning for the new year. So what I really wanted to like chat about was just like how to manage your stress during this time, but then also most people are a bit burnt out by this point in the year. So you're probably experiencing a bit of burnout or a lot of burnout, depending on your levels. And then also you're trying to manage stress because you're dealing with your personal life. You have the holidays coming up. You are dealing with everything to get that ready for your family. You're traveling, you're taking days off because of the holidays, and then you also have to deal with your career. So I wanted to chat a little bit about like how to manage that stress, how to deal with the burnout, and like what that looks like. I think what's hard for people to understand is anxiety can play a big part in this, but then also like people experience the Sunday scaries, for example. Sunday scaries is also not just anxiety. A lot of times it can be because of your stress and your burnout levels. It can be because you're burnt out personally. It can be because you're burnt out at work. It can be that you're so stressed out in personal or professional life. And sometimes that's the Sunday scaries, and those things trigger your anxiety. So I think a lot of times people blame the Sunday scaries on just like having an anxious mind or anxious, you suffer with anxiety, whatever. And so they just like blame it all there. And there's so much more that goes into that. And a lot of times it's just that you're feeling overwhelmed to some degree. There's something overwhelming you. You're feeling overwhelmed at work. You're feeling overwhelmed with your personal life. You're feeling overwhelmed with your kids, whatever. So I know that this is common. This is what we all experience. I don't personally deal with the Sunday scaries necessarily. There are times where I'm a bit like dreading meetings and a bit like, oh, I just don't want to wake up for this meeting. I don't want to go to work tomorrow, those kinds of things. And to me, that's when I always know like I'm in a level of burnout. I'm not motivated at work. I'm not having that like excited, energized feeling. Something is bugging and I need to like figure out what that is. And usually I can like kind of break that down a little bit and put some boundaries in place, but it's not easy. It happens so fast and happens so often. So don't think that you're like the only person that experiences this and that something is wrong with you and you have to change your career immediately and like all these things are the problem. It's normal, it's okay. So I think what's important is for people like we in our normal podcast, not our Cheers to Career series, have talked a lot about burnout and we've talked a lot about like the cycles of it. We have an episode about it. I can relink it actually with this one too, so that you guys, if you're more curious and you haven't heard that one, you can explore more about what the phases of burnout are, and how to kind of overcome it. So I'll share that one as well so that you can kind of tag team this. But basically, burnout will really impact your work and your personal life. It will come crashing in. You will feel exhausted. Like you'll be detached. You will reduce performance at home, at work. Like for me right now, my house is not in its normal condition. Like I'm walking past things that I would normally clean up. I don't really care if there's dishes in the sink. I don't really care if my bed didn't get made today. And those are always huge red flags for me where I know like I'm maxed. I am at my capacity. I'm overwhelmed. I'm overstimulated. I'm burnt out. I'm exhausted. And I fucking hate everyone. Like that's the level I get to. And it's because I don't pay enough attention to my warning signs before then. When I was in therapy, we had like a lot of really good sessions around recognizing my phases of burnout. And that's why we did a podcast episode on it. And so I think what's really hard is when it comes to work, sometimes we forget that, like, if I'm burnt out personally, it can make it even easier for me to be burnt out at work. If I'm burnt out at work, it can make it even easier for me to burnt out at home personally. So it's just like they kind of play into each other. And like your work and your professional life really come into your personal life and vice versa. So personal life always impacts it. And it's so hard sometimes when you're going through stuff personally and you have to show up to work and pretend everything's fine. So just like be aware that these are all normal. It's totally fine to experience these things. It's acceptable to break them down and understand them a little bit more and understand the impact that both of them play in your life, however it is. And then the stages, like understand what stages you go through and what triggers or things that you can find where you're like, okay, this is something I think I'm about to be burnt out, or holy shit, I'm already burnt out. And then like adapting from there, like understand the stages for you personally, because everyone has them differently. For me at work, so it's easy for me to identify them at home, like in my personal life, like when I can tell that I'm maxed out. At work, it's a bit harder for me because I am like a bit of a machine. Like if I'm not fucking, I don't know, running around like a crazy person, feeling like I can't catch a break, I feel unwell at work. Like I almost prefer that. It's comfortable for me. I lived in such a state of that for so long that that's like my comfort zone. And so when I'm not, I'm like really uncomfortable. But for me at work, I can tell when I'm burnt out when I was just saying, like, I don't want to wake up for the meetings. I'm like, why the fuck do I have this meeting? How can I get out of it? Like, all of those different types of things. And then my tasks, if I keep having to push my tasks to the next week and I'm not having time to like sit, or I have time to sit and like work on a project I need to do, but I'm not willing to, that's always a huge sign for me. So like if each week, usually around Monday or Friday, it just depends like how my week has gone. I try to do it on Monday mornings. I'll take some time Monday morning and I'll write down what my priorities are for that week or like what my tasks are, and then kind of outline my projects that I have that are like continuous. I actually want to make a journal, like, or I don't know, a notebook with the structure I have. I've been like really kind of playing around with this idea because that works for me personally. Like each week I have these are my priorities. And then on like another page, I have like these are my projects. I add like a little couple notes of like where it's at, some reminders, those types of things. I think it'd be really cool to share that with you guys. But so that's what I do on Mondays. And if I notice that, like, as I'm looking from the week before to the new week, and I'm still pushing that same task or I'm still pushing that thing, and it's the simplest thing, like, I need to schedule this meeting with this person. If I can't make the time to put that on my calendar, huge red flag of burnout for me. So, those are the types of things that I start to notice. If I have space on my calendar, but I can't find the mental space to stop and work on my projects that are like my big projects that take a lot of my mental space, if I can't even find the space for that, that tells me again, like something else is going on. And so then you kind of have to break it down of like, is this personal? Is this professional? Separate them out, understand where they're coming from. Sometimes they're feeding off of each other, but a lot of times at work, it can be your high workload. It can be a lack of support. It can be unclear expectations or unclear understanding of what project you actually need to do or how to do the task, or a lack of control over the work that you're doing. So it's like something that you really want to change, but you don't even have the ability to make that change. And it like you kind of go over and over and over in your head of like, this is so frustrating, frustrating, frustrating. That's going to cause that burnout. It's going to cause that stress that just, I mean, it just grows and it builds and it's so much. So that to me would be how I would explain understanding burnout. Like I said, I will relink that podcast episode that we did about it so you can understand the phases, the cycles. My therapist really helped me break that down and understand it. And it was so eye-opening. I still forget about it, so don't think I'm perfect over here, but I still forget about all those things. And it usually is me reacting to burnout before I'm dealing with my burnout. So let me take a sip of my wine. I have to do it awkwardly because my microphone's really big and in my face. Okay. So like I said, with burnout, there's going to be those key causes of burnout, your high workload, your lack of support, a terrible boss, unclear expectations, all those things I just listed. The other thing is like identifying your stressors. So not only do you need to understand your burnout, you need to identify what's stressing you out. And I would reflect on this, like really take some time sometime. Like I know it's hard, but just like be like, okay, what is causing me to stress? Do I have too much on my plate? Is there so much on my plate that I feel like I can't even get a grip? Are my goals unclear? Is my project unclear? Do I not have a definition of what I'm actually supposed to accomplish? Is my boss being a jerk? Are they challenging me all the time? Are they micromanaging me? Because I'm sorry, micromanagers for sure stress me out and I would be burnt out too. I would fucking hate them. And then also, like, is this something personal? Is my stressors coming from something personal? Is it coming from my personal life? So it's really important to break those down. And like I said, if you can, do your best to separate it out of like, is this a personal burnout or professional burnout? Is it a personal stress or I don't remember if I said personal or professional, they're too similar. So whichever one I'm missing. But like it's really important to break those apart because they can blur the lines so much and it's so hard to understand unless you break them apart. And once you can start identifying the stressors, it's so much easier to start addressing it. It's so much easier to get a handle on it. So what I like to do is kind of break it down of like what category would this stress fall under? Is this something I can control, or is this something I can't control? Can I control my boss micromanaging me? Can I control not knowing my goals? Absolutely. I can schedule a meeting and I can be like, I'm a bit unclear of what's expected. I'm a bit unclear of where you want me to go with this, and have that check in with your boss and say, I feel like I'm spinning in circles. I literally just had a meeting about this with one of my projects. Like, I feel like I'm running in circles because I can't understand like where I can take this, what I can do. I'm having these major blockers. Like, help me out. Am I on the right path? Do I need to pivot? All of those things. I felt so much better after finally scheduling that meeting because I was just like, okay, if I don't do something about this, I'm going to keep spinning and spinning and spinning, and it's almost like a spiral. So take control of what you can, understand what you can or can't control, and assess the impact of it. So, like, what impact does it have if it is an uncontrollable task? If it's seriously that severe, you usually still have the ability to address it with your manager or address it with a colleague, like whatever it is that you need to do. But like, understand the impact it's having on you and your performance, and what can you do about it? Is it controllable or uncontrollable? The next thing I want to talk about is more strategies for managing your stress and burnout, because I think you can attack these so many different ways. There's so many opportunities for us to deal with the things we're dealing with in our life, and it's so much easier sometimes for us to ignore it, but then it causes more stress and more burnout and more resentment and all of those terrible negative feelings that none of us want to feel. So the more ideas you can have, or the more things that you can try, I think the better. Some will work and some won't, but like, start just trying and figuring it out to see what works for you. Or sometimes each scenario is different, and sometimes you have to use different strategies for different problems or levels of burnout. Okay. So my first one is setting boundaries. And this is something I do personally and professionally. Professionally, much harder for me to set those boundaries. I am a bit of a workaholic. It's gotten better with my new job, I would say, but also a bit worse sometimes, because right now, like, there's definitely times where I'm like, I don't need to be so available for these people. Like, I got fucked over already this year. Why am I bending over backwards for them? It's affecting me. So, like I said, when I'm having those moments where I don't want to wake up for my meetings, or I don't want to have them, and I'm like, why do I have this meeting? Sometimes I move them. Sometimes I'm like, I can't make this meeting this week. I will reschedule you. It's not going to work out for me. Obviously, there's some that I can't do that too, but I take back my power. I put a boundary in place of like, listen, I can't do it today. Like, I can't wake up at 6 a.m. for this meeting. So sorry. I don't say it like that. Obviously, you have to be tactful with your approach and your communication, but advocate for yourself, advocate for no work hours, advocate for taking breaks during the day, advocate for having less meetings, block yourself out so that people can't schedule those meetings. There's so many times where I've had to like put blockers on my calendar to be like, this is private time. I will choose to let you take it if we need to have the meeting, if it's a priority for me. Most of the time, other people make you feel like their stuff is your priority, and it's not. So they have their own projects, their own goals, their own things that they need done, and they push that on you. And this happens personally and professionally, where they're like, I want this. This will make me more comfortable. This gives me less anxiety. Hey, Taylor, can you give me this? And it's something that is what you do or what you have control over, but it doesn't mean Taylor has to drop it right now or within that day and give it to that person. That is up to her to choose and decide. So use that as an example of like, remember that they're going to push you because they want it personally. Where does that fall on your priority list? Check your list that you made for the week. Is this a priority? Ask them what their timeline is. Ask them why they need it so quickly. Like, use what you can to set those boundaries and advocate for yourself to have space. There's been times where I've had to take breaks during the day where I'm just like, I need to go for a walk. I need to just sit and watch TV. Sometimes I have to force it. Sometimes I have to be like, sit and watch TV while you eat lunch. Do not go sit and eat lunch at your desk and work. It's very hard, very difficult, but setting those boundaries will really start sending you back into a healthier state, lessening the stress, helping your burnout. The next thing I would say, which kind of comes back to what I was already saying, like, prioritize and delegate. So prioritize your stuff, prioritize other people's asks, and if your boss is asking for something, ask them what the priority level is. Say, here's what I have on my plate right now. Would you like me to drop any of this to prioritize this? Or is this like, where does this fall in my prioritization? Delegating, if you're able to have a team of people or people that you know can handle it, maybe you don't have to handle it. There's so many things that I do sometimes at work and personally, honestly, that I don't have to be the person doing it, but I know I can do it. And sometimes I'm just like, yeah, let me bust this out really fast. That takes away from my cup. That takes away from what I have available. And I have to be mindful of that sometimes. If you have a team underneath you, God, I'm the delegation queen. I miss having a team so fucking bad. I loved having my admins. I loved empowering people on my team to learn more, do more, and try, even if they didn't do it great, even if I still had to fix things, even if it caused more chaos sometimes. Like the mental space you get from pushing something to somebody else is insane. And also, it's helping them grow, it's helping them learn a new skill and so that they can continue to grow in their careers. So like I always have loved delegating because it's like this is not for me. Like I could do it, I don't need to do it. So those are ways that I would delegate for sure. And if you don't have a team of people, it's definitely harder. Right now, it's a bit challenging for me. And that's when that prioritization comes into play of like, I maybe can't get rid of this, but is it a priority? Is it something that has to be a high level thing? And I have to kind of go through that checklist. It's nice that I always have things written down. Some people are more of like a digital person, they'll have their like tasks and projects on their computer. I've tried that so many times. And if I really focus on it, I can do it. But I'm a pen and paper gal. Like I love it. Writing stuff is actually scientifically proven to make you remember it more. So just putting that out there. But there's something for me about like writing it out, being able to see it, looking at my notebook, having it written, and that reminder, because I'm always on so many different screens and apps and whatever throughout the day, that it's easy for me to forget that I had that task management platform. So I don't know, do what works for you, but prioritizing, classifying stuff as like high level, must be done today or tomorrow, has to be done this week, like whatever you want to prioritize things. And then also get that clarification when you can from like people. If they're asking you to help and they're not your boss, find out more information. Let them know you'll get to it. Whatever it is, if it's your boss, literally ask them, what priority level do you want me to have? And if I take this, that means something else on my list has to drop. Don't be afraid of that. If a boss does not allow you to do that, you have bigger fucking problems for sure. Um, Next strategy, I would say, is having a support system. This is very, very important to me. I think it's very crucial to have coworkers or colleagues, mentors, whoever that get it, that work in your field, that understand what you're going through, that are in the grind a bit more. And then also socially, like family or personal, it's very important to have someone that like just you can say something and it goes nowhere. It's no big problem. If you're going to have a support system with your colleagues or your mentors, make sure that they aren't people below you. That's always super crucial. You should never have a support system that reports lower than you or reports to you necessarily. It's different when you're on equal playing fields or you're below them. So just keep that in mind. And if you're going to vent or ask for guidance, whatever, just do your best to stay professional, even if it's hard, even if you're really good friends. I have been there, I have done that. It is so hard when you're super, super close with people, but it'll always pay off in the long run if you can remain as professional as possible, even when it is with those colleagues. When you're at home, when you're with your friends, that's when you can totally lose your shit. That's when you can be like, everything's out the window. There's no restrictions and you can just fucking vent it all out and it's gonna go nowhere and it's no problem. But you do have to be careful because I have known people who vented or I don't know, expressed their frustrations a lot to their partners or like their friends, and then somehow their friends and their coworkers end up like hanging out together and they fucking hate them and it's super uncomfortable and they're like, well, I don't like how they are to you at work, so like I don't really care to be their friend. And then you're like, but wait, what about this social thing for work? Like, can't you just be nice? And it's really hard sometimes for people depending on like what you've said, so just be mindful of that. Oh my gosh, fruit flies. Can't wait for it to get a little bit colder. Don't want to admit that I just said that, but I can't wait for all the bugs to go away. Okay. The next strategy I would share would be kind of around like the self-care realm, kind of similar to what I was saying about like setting boundaries and being able to take breaks during the day. Like you need that mindfulness, that space. So take space, mindfulness, work on your self-care. For me, if I don't get my workouts in, that impacts my life so much, especially with work. And that's when I started to realize a big frustration and burnout and stress that I was having with work is I was having a lot of really early morning meetings, like I'm saying like 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and I'd be in them until 9, 10. And I started to be like, why am I like, why is this happening? What's going on? Like, I was just getting super, super irritable, frustrated. I was like resentful and angry. And I started to realize it's because that was cutting into my self-care time. Normally, I wake up early. Yes, because I'm early doesn't mean I have to be working. Yes, because I responded to their team's message doesn't mean I wanted to be working, but they suddenly are like, oh, she's responded. Let's get some information. And I'd be like, well, I'm awake anyways. Let me respond. And then I wasn't having good workouts. I wasn't having the space I needed for myself. And it sucked. It really, really impacted me. So that's my stress relief. That's my thing that I don't know, that's my time. And I let my boundary go. And I thought if I'm awake in the morning and they have different time zones, if I could just respond to some of this stuff really quickly, no big deal. And it was a big deal because then I couldn't stop thinking about it and stop responding because I had no boundaries. And then that told them, like, oh, cool, we can just have a meeting because she's awake anyways. So that one was a huge eye opener for me. Still working on it, still have some happening, but it's gotten better. um, but yeah, like the mindfulness and the space, like find ways to have that meditation, the exercise, the journaling, whatever that looks like for you. Like everyone experiences these different slow mornings, whatever. Find, I don't know, find what works for you. Um, and then the last one I'll share right now is, I don't know, focus more on your purpose again. Like, what is your purpose with your job? What lights you up about your job? What makes you love your job? What makes you passionate about the field you're in? What makes you excited to go to work? Why are you going to work? If it's just for a paycheck, you got to find your purpose above that. Um, Maybe you need a different job. I don't know. But like figure out what your personal values are, why you're going to work, why you enjoy your work, and figure out if that's still aligning with you personally. Sometimes that changes. Sometimes that's going to evolve and you're going to be like, actually, I used to love this, but now I've changed as a person and I don't enjoy this anymore. That happened to me at my last job. I used to love doing paralegal work and I loved working in the family law department. And then quickly it became harder. My personal values started to change, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And that's when I had to shift what I was doing professionally. But figure out like the impact of your work. Does it still make you happy? Why is it not making you happy? Is it just because you're burnt out and you can find that passion again and you can focus back on the positives? Or does it truly not align with you anymore and it's impossible for you to get past it? Like that's sometimes a thing and that's sometimes okay, but you really do need to break that down and like don't make these decisions like lightly. I do want to do a podcast episode about like pivoting. So that would probably come into play for that conversation, but be mindful of that. Don't just make rash decisions because you're in stress and burnout. And I guess the last thing I would say too is like understand that not everything has to be done right now. So you might be feeling stressed because the end of the year is coming and like, how can I wrap everything up? I don't have enough time in the day. I don't have enough days left. Whatever it is, like, don't let your personal stress about the year coming to a close stress you out. Check in with your boss. Let him know, like, here's where I'm at. What's okay if it doesn't get done? What do I have to get done before the end of the year? That comes back to that prioritization. What needs to be done? But don't let the end of the year stress like start to make it worse for you because you feel like everything has to be accomplished so that you can start the year fresh. Sometimes projects carry over. Sometimes projects don't even matter. So just do that check-in so you don't have to stress about it and make things worse. Um, let's see. Honestly, my biggest things that I want to like have you take away from this is just like recognizing when you are burnt out and understanding its progress, understanding when it gets better, when it doesn't, understand why you're stressed, when you're stressed. Sometimes it's just going to the office can make you stressed. And like that's a bigger thing. So like what does that mean? What does that look like? Why is that happening? Um, and I think what's even harder, if you're like me, it's not easy to admit this. It's not easy to be like, I'm fucking burnt out. I'm maxed out at work. I am taking on too much. Like, I'm more of someone like, give me everything. I can handle it. And then sometimes I have to put my ego aside and be like, I can't fucking handle it. Like, I need a break. I need to take, I need to take some time off, take a mental health day. Maybe you need to consider changing your role. Maybe you need to or explore a different career path. Like, I don't know. If it continues to happen all of the time and everything is constantly happening and this cycle keeps happening, it's important that you start to really break this down and figure out where that's coming from. But the end of the year is going to feel this way. It's going to feel messy. It's going to feel crazy. It's going to feel stressful. You are going to get burnt out. You have a lot playing into you personally because of the holidays and professionally. So, like, be mindful of that, break it down, understand it. And just, I don't know, the more you like sit and break it down, write about it, journal about it, talk about it with your friends, whatever, the more you like let it out of you, the quicker you're going to be able to resolve it, the quicker you're going to be able to deal with it, the more confidence you're going to have that conversation at work. But it takes being vulnerable, it takes thinking about it, it takes taking some space to process it, and it takes just I don't know, dealing with it. Like you can't ignore it. It'll only get worse. So I just want to remind you guys to manage your stress. I want to remind you to take care of your mental health. This fucking fruit fly. Get away. It's important to take care of these things, especially at the end of the year. You want to be your best self. You want to like enjoy the holidays. So like take the time. It could literally take 5 to 10 minutes once a week to really sit with yourself and be like, why is this happening? Why am I stressed? How can I take some small steps daily to build back my resilience, to get back my energy, to get back my passion? And do I want to? Sometimes that's the question you have to ask too. Like, do I even want to do this? Is this my job that I really, really care about? And I really care about this company and I want to fix this? Or is this a bigger problem where I'm like, okay, now I actually need to start considering a different career path? The end of the year is a great time to start doing that. It's a great time to get your resume revamped. It's a great time to start looking for some jobs, exploring some companies. The last Cheers to Careers episode was all about like job searching. So go back to that if that's where you're at. But like, you won't be able to figure these things out or make sound decisions if you're meeting it with a state of stress or burnout or chaos. Like, everything is crazy. That is just fucking life. Do what you can to calm it down, think about it, process it. If you need to do it in therapy, do it in therapy. If you need to do it with your friends, do it with your friends, whatever it is. But you need to have work-life balance and you need to have boundaries, really. It's a journey. It's not something that will never come back. You will be going through this forever. So, as long as you're working and as long as you have any sense of responsibility personally and professionally, this will keep happening. So, figure out how to manage it. If you fucking hate your job, then do something about it. You can either stand up for yourself at work, change something about it at work, explore a different role if you love the company, or this is your chance to start doing something scary and finding a different job or exploring the thing that you do personally that you think could make money, but you're just not ready to take that step. Like, there's so much to it. So, yeah, I think that's where I'll end it. Super quick episode. Sorry, not sorry, I guess. Like I said, bit exhausted, not sad that it's ending right now, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you took something away from it or it was a bit eye-opening for you to start addressing these things. Like I've said a million times, if you ever have questions professionally or you ever need guidance or you ever just want to talk, like I am a safe space. Please DM me on the podcast page or my personal page, whatever it is. If you have my number, text me. We'll vent about it. We can get wine and talk about it, whatever it is, but have some self-compassion and I don't know, be open to exploring it. And if you like this, share it with a friend, share it with me, say that you liked it. I don't really care. And other than that, have a great week. And we will be back next week with both of us. Bye.